what I wanted to kind of share a little bit about, I think I'll pose a question for you to kind of hold, and you can just see what your mind's reaction is. Just notice what that is. It's not a statement of truth or anything. What if, what if everything was sacred? How would you be? How would you relate to life if there was like a recognition that everything was sacred? So just hold whatever reaction, response, kind of thoughts, anything that bubbles up for you. And part of this is really rooted in me coming back and going to India in these I spent just 2 weeks there. It's been 6 years since I went back there to visit family and connect with, kind of went on pilgrimage with community there. And I wanted to just I'm excited to come back and share some pieces of that experience, which was very much like a kind of spiritual pilgrimage of sorts for me. And again, another survey. Has anyone ever been to India? Just raising hands. Okay, great. Anyone anywhere in Asia, Southeast Asia? Okay, maybe some more folks. Okay. I can't, I won't make a generalization for you, but maybe there's some aspects of this if you've traveled in parts of Asia. Um, of course, each one is like its own unique microcosm, but some of the things that really came alive for me was this reality of, man, everyone is really like tuned in. Not everyone, but there's a lot of devotion. It's undeniable and unquestionable that somewhere along the way, as I'm walking down a random street, that I'm going to have a sign that shows that there's been some either active prayer or some kind of worship or something signaling that someone has marked this site as holy or has seen it as something um, imbued with some kind of meaning. Um, and again, maybe check out, like, this has nothing necessarily to have to do with a religious attitude or belief, but of course, like, we all have our conditioning and cultural backgrounds that have come in. And what I mean when I break down like this idea of sacred for the purposes of what I'm wanting to share is just really like this reality that there's something inherently valuable here, that's worthy of our respect or attention. Um, you can make it even more lofty and higher powered, could have other dimensions beyond that. But for the purposes of like this context, maybe that's like the simpler way. That something is inherently has value and is worthy of our respect. Um, as I saw signs of that in so many places, one of the most memorable ones I had um, was I visited this foothill town of Rishikesh in it's the foothills of the Himalayas, so it's kind of northern India. It's not actually the Himalayas. You're not going to see epic peaks or anything, but it's like green and definitely hilly for sure. So it's like approaching that. It's not super high altitude by any means. Um, but one of the aspects of this area that was really historically, like over millennia, I don't know how many thousands of years, but the river Ganga, which is like in itself, the Ganga is like seen as like a very, embodiment of something that's alive, a goddess that's moving and has supplied the nation and the country and people with so much benefit. So it's already on a holy site, as it were, right? But so many people have like literally walked and pilgrimaged there, just to this town to be on these banks before it was probably a town, is what imagine. A lot of people just sit along the banks somewhere. There's all kinds of things happening. And so I might give you some images and just kind of check out if you can like be with that image. I'm sitting on the banks with some of um, my Dharma homies there. They're not affiliated with Dharma homies, but they're my actual Dharma siblings in some way. And we're sitting on the side of the banks and like just like really just enjoying the river. So on a mundane thing, it's like a beautiful river. It's like rapids moving. It's ice cold. It's beautiful outside. So that's a context. And then of course there's other things happening. Temple bells are kind of across the distance. There's a lot of activity that you may get to pick up. And across the river, I kind of spot this. Um, we call them babas. Babas are kind of holy men, ascetics that have like dedicated their life in some frame or another to essentially like they're not monks. They don't have a place to go in a monastic setting. They're just going out into some form of wilderness. They're following their own kind of attitude. So, you can usually see them because they're marked by wearing orange. They might be other colors, but essentially, and they're often wearing, they maybe look a little disheveled. They have big beards and walking barefoot sometimes, or have very little possessions, and assumingly that's all the possessions they carry. And so this Baba is out in the distance, and it's like maybe and the river's pretty wide. It's not something I'm going to swim across. It's, several hundred feet across. But I could see him in the orange, and he's just like sitting. And we've been hanging out at this river already for a while, so I'm like spotting him, eyeing him, and I'm like, this guy's just been really sitting here. How he feels like, close to an hour. Um, and I can't make out any details, but I'm just like tuned in to that. And it's already like tuning into somebody that I'm making a lot of projections. I don't know his story. I don't know anything about him. I don't actually have a later story of I've encountered him and have some profound experience. It's just that moment. It's just that momentary kind of parallel process. I'm in my own process with my community and friends, playing on the river, being, reverent in the river, and he's in something. And so I just feel that. Sometimes you can kind of have a sense of like, wow, someone's in like a zone. They're like in a process. And I kind of picked that up and I'm like, oh, it feels peaceful. I'm abiding in that peace. And at the same moment, this kayak comes like moving through these rapids nearby. And there's a scene where this Baba is just like sitting as if he's just like kind of facing and this like ongoing, pretty fast moving kayaker. It's like coming through. And so there's like this like really like what I can presume is like some kind of holy site of like some sacred spiritual kind of I put a lot of projection to that. And then like this really profane modern kayaker in a yellow bright boat just like going in. And I'm just like, wow, I just see this clash. And I mean, of course, the kayaker goes by. They're not on the river to get the same moment, but there's something really potent about that because I'm like, it it, it kind of broke a veil of like, wow, I'm like having this reverential kind of experience, and all of a sudden, like, why did it break when the kayaker went through? Like it just like shifted for me. Like, it was hilarious for a moment. I'm just like, what, y'all seeing this? What's going on? And to be honest, that kayaker's having their own experience. I mean, being on any kind of river, as you might, maybe if you've been on a river of any kind, it's pretty adventurous. Some might say it's like a religious experience if you're on rapids. Your life is at. So I just like kind of like thought through that. I'm like, wow, okay. That was just a frame of attitude. My attitude got shifted because of this composition of images. And, you know, goes by and there's so many different moments, but I'm gonna just highlight a couple that I think are memorable and are sweet ways to connect back. And at night, there's a lot of like street vendors. You see all those like hawkers anywhere in Asia, like just making like some of the best food is the street food, if you know. It's also some of the most dangerous food, so you got to make sure it's cooked. I do. I can't mess with some of the straight up street food if it's not cooked, just because I don't have the gut bacteria that's ready for all that. And we're at one of the vendors making amazing kind of coal-fired like kebabs with paneer and vegetables and other things. Paneer is like a type of a type of cheese. It's like a very handmade type of localized cheese. I don't even describe it very well. And there's like a fruit stand nearby. And we're like sitting there for a while, like standing there for a while, just eating. And what's noticeable is that these cows are always coming through. There's so many cows on the streets. This is like a town that's hustling, bustling, and there's always a cow or three kind of just moving along. And it's this is like a little calf cow. It's not huge. It's very sweet as it comes by one of these store vendors or we're beside him. They have like a little stick. After a while, the cow's persistent to wanting to get a little bit of food, and they're like they can see that the customers are a little bothered. So then they get like puffed up. The merchant or vendor, I mean, he has a stick, and he's like as if he's like gonna go hit the cow, but he's not hitting the cow. He's just like sweetly kind of pretending to usher this cow and like dramatically kind of like scare it. And the cow's like, okay, I'm gonna waddle away. No one's really intimidating. It's not like a act of violence any kind of way. You're like, this is really adorable looking to me. And then like 10 minutes later, the cow's gone for a while. 10 minutes later, cow comes back. My friend had gone to the bathroom, and you know, the cow comes back, cow gets sent back, and he's like, hey, you know that cow that we saw? I'm pretty sure that same cow was just down the street the other block and bothering some other vendor. And I think they just send them back and forth to each other. The cow is just literally just walking back and forth. And so like in this moment, I'm just like devouring my food and I'm just like absorbing this like interaction that's pretty mundane. It's really mundane. It's happening all the time. What strikes me is the utter kindness and how much of that little pocket of reality, like the cow is intrinsic to it. It's not like a bother, it's not a nuisance. It's been kindly absorbed and it's just kind of sent from one side to the other. Maybe someone feeds it. And it's like it's just part of the composition. Do you get what I'm meaning? Like it's not this other thing. For a while as a person, I was like, oh, this is a cow. It's like a cow is like a it's like so much in a row. They're in the way. Could be a perception. It's a problem. It's trying to get my food. It's antagonizing. It's dirty, whatever my story is with a cow. But then in that moment, I was like, oh, this cow is just like, at least these folks in this moment, they just have seemingly accepted the cow through this innocent act of sending it back and forth without strong reactivity. It's like no one's impatient. I'm just like, oh, that says something. Like there's like inherently something here is like important for me to pick up on. Like it's not an attitude I'm very used to. One, I don't have cows around my neighborhood, but like it's just a way of a certain type of acceptedness that I was really struck by. And that's true for with a lot of strays and so much of happening. And I'll give one more image just to kind of like give a different variation. This is now no longer in this Rishikesh town. I'm in Kolkata, which is on the west side of India, and it's a mega city. These, cities in India are like huge. They are ginormous and teeming. So much is happening. So I go to what my cousin takes me to one of the well-known local markets, which is an open air market mostly. And there's so many. It's like it's overwhelming to me, to be honest. It's like a lot happening. I'm trying to like figure out what I'm supposed to look at. So much senses, so many things happening all at once. And it's close to sunset. And so I'm not tracking anything, but I'm starting to notice, you know, uh, as we go to vendor, like people are coming from with trays and trays with different foods, and each set of vendors, which seemingly look independent, like they're all like, peddling their own wares. Um, they're like some people are chopping up vegetables, some people are doing some things there together while they're like attending to customers. And as it gets to be like what I'm assuming is like 6 o'clock or approaching the hour of sunset, what dawns on me is like, oh, there are a lot of these merchants are Muslim, and that many people are as they're running around as the hour gets to sunset, like this I'm realizing is Ramadan. It's like a holy month of fasting. Um, and we have maybe I'm only guessing like probably hundreds of merchants that independently they have been all been prepping food. That's what I was seeing. They're prepping food and then they're coming together as it comes to sunset. So many of them are starting to come together outside, sitting in large pods of circles. At once, when I thought everyone was independent and they're in their own separate world and independently interacting with this business person, what I'm seeing is like this whole communion has literally just transpired in front of me, where people are maybe preparing food for each other. There's an interaction of, um, like a massive potluck in a way. And so what in my view, had become like a independent, single kind of thing, all of a sudden took on this larger collectivism that really, is momentary. Again, it's like how often does this happen there? I don't know because I'm only stepping in to this ethos for a moment, right? I'm a visitor in a way. And so I'm like, wow, this is ambiguous. This is like what's happening here. This is a daily reality. It's not that staggering of a difference. It feels like that to me from my own sensibilities conditioned here in the West. And even as much as I'm Indian, I'm American. I've been conditioned here, right? Outside of that. But I felt the togetherness and like what I'm presuming is a certain type of harmony that's not really spoken. It's not like some orchestration was happening. There was no mastermind. Like, hey, everyone bring this to the potluck. It's just like that's what they're doing, is what it seemed like. And so there was like this type of innate collective intelligence, right? Some kind of wisdom that I had picked up on that I could decode, but it's like it was a second language literally to me. It felt like it took a while to like allow myself to recognize it. And And so kind of going back to the view of like everything being sacred or everything having some inherent value and worthy of our respect, you know. What I saw and weaving together is this like theme of, like, wow, things are really interconnected right now. And that interconnection, there's not a sense of control. It's like it's an accepted reality on one level. And And just like that cow, like I'm sure the vendor down the street that was sending the cow back to this other vendor, they're not in a they're not like radioing each other or texting each other, hey, is the cow over there? I'm gonna send this cow over here now. It's not that, right? It's something more organic. It's something more maybe subtle, right? And that interconnection is like it's maybe more akin to what mycelium networks of mushrooms that send it signals across, forest floors are like. It's information, but information that doesn't need to be so pronounced and explicit. I've been so used to that and conditioned within that in my Western attitude, right? Everything needs, I'm like, as a therapist, I'm like, let's make everything the implicit explicit, right? I'm here to like make it really overt and direct. And what I noticed there is like even while it's in your face, it's no doubt that the cow's in my face, like the kayakers coming through. There's something inside of there that that interconnection just kind of doesn't need to be. It's maybe not remarkable, is what I'll say on some level. And with that, when I'm able to like tune my, in those moments when I tune myself to what I assumed was that the channel or close to the channel of what things were operating at, I felt myself less separate. Like I'm not just a foreigner sitting on the block eating some food from somewhere else. I'm actually a part of the mix. My interaction with the vendor and how I'm interacting with the cow is intrinsic. My care and my respect, it's not separate. I'm not othered either. But before, when I was a kind of just in my me, mine attitude, I didn't really track that. it was very self-absorbed and I think myopic, kind of like closed, closed knits. Like this is the funnel of my reality was really this tight. And then all of a sudden these moments happen where I'm like, oh, there's something wider, a wider view, a wider reality. And that was a lot to take in the wake of, seeing litter. India has a lot of litter. It's everywhere. It's hard not to see, it's really hard for me, again, with the conditioned sensibility. And I think that comes from a particular type of respect of nature that I've learned. So I have my judgments and reactions. And in those moments, my attitude towards like, othering, being angry or judgmental was definitely painful. Of course, I can't control how a mass population moves. When I see some like clear signals of misogyny and gender kind of um, as I got certain types of attention and people spoke to me in certain ways than my peers who were female identified. And so like it took a while. I couldn't, it was like hard to integrate that into like, well, how's this sacred? How's this worthy of attention? Like, it was hard to kind of pan out in those moments. But I noticed similarly in those moments of pain, my attention, my mind, everything kind of shrunk down. There's a contraction that happened for sure in my attitude, and I couldn't control it. My heart kind of clenched up a bit. There's tension. So it was, that was hard. And what I had to work with was, can I open to this? You know? And so that question that I posed um, in the newsletter is something really alive. Does this view or this perspective allow me to open and engage? Does that help me participate as if I'm part of this inherently valuable as well as seeing something valuable, whether I'm talking to the store clerk, um, who I can have a meaningless transaction with and just buy something as a consumer, or actually if I take a moment to really get to know that clerk and what he's been doing here, sitting in this shop for decades, and actually some of those interactions, if I took a moment to register it, there was deep insight, deep dharma that was being conveyed to me. But I had to participate in it. If I came for the transaction, that's what I got. If I came for the consumption, that's what I got. If I came to problematize it, if I came with the sense of reaction, it's often what I took in. So, right, does this perspective or view help me open or engage, or does it make me shut down or turn away, avert my gaze? Can I accept this? Even if like acceptance is like a different level where like at certain moments I can pick up the trash. I can't pick up all the trash. I'm gonna pick up a little bit, you know? And so it helped me to feel a different relationship to, how I move through that land as I kind of sunk into that deeper kind of soil to be a part of that mycelium network, to let that interconnection be there. And in those moments where I really couldn't, it took a certain degree of, you know, you could say faith or trust that actually it doesn't really matter if I believe it or not. It's like if I act as if there's a truth to something of this inseparation, like this non-separateness, um, I'm likely going to make more connected choices. I'm likely going to be more engaged with the people I'm around. And then what's happening in my own heart and mind where it's so painful that I can't do that? And how do I tend to that? Right? How do I accept that in a practice that Jess led, similarly, like kind of include all these really, really reactive, hard feelings, hard attitudes as well. what's worthy of my full attention and care? If I show up with life and in the world around me, what's possible? You know, what's kind of the world, whether it's in my local neighborhood or, you know, a local protest or the interaction with the store clerk here at CVS. Yeah.
That's what's up right there.